Bart Schrijver, thank you so much for being here with me today. I am a really big fan of this film, The North. I really admire your process and I admire the film very much. I wanted to start by sort of talk. I know that you have some connection with New Zealand, which is where I am, and that relates to the making of this film in some way. I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about that and how that might maybe forged this story.
Yeah, of course. So I went to New Zealand with a friend of mine in 2017, 2018.
Mm,
I was already making films at the time, but I was kind of in this point, I think, where a lot of starting out filmmakers are, where you have made a couple of short films and you don't really know how to get to the next step of
mm,
maybe getting some money or, even thinking about features. And so I was stuck in that place for quite a long time. And then a friend of mine who was just finishing his internship, he said, I want to go away for a couple of months. And I want to go out in nature a lot. And we were drinking a couple of beers and we found out that there were these very long hiking trails around the world.
mm,
And we were looking those up and he said, oh yeah, maybe I'll do one of those, the one in the States, or you got in Japan a couple. And then we found the Araroa in New Zealand. And he said, maybe I'm going to do that one. And I said,
mm,
okay, cool. You know what? I'll come and I'll join you for 2 weeks. And I think it was maybe 2 beers later that I said, should we just do it together? And he said, yeah, let's do it together. And that was it. That was sealed. So half a year later, in the beginning of October, we flew to New Zealand
mm.
and we walked for more than 3,000 kilometers, slept in
Wow.
one tent together, and had this whole experience and this adventure, which at least for me, I've never had done anything like that before. We
Mm,
camped as when we were as a family in vacations, but it was on a campground and those kind of things. But
mm,
really, the walking and the tents and being in nature for that long, I never had experienced that. So a lot of what is now in the film in the north, which is also about these two friends that are going on this long journey together and walking through Scotland. A lot of what I experienced with my friend in New Zealand is in the film because I kept
yeah.
a diary, so all those little bits and pieces. And but it was also that New Zealand just experiencing nature in that way
Mm,
um, that really opened up also something for me that I felt like this is something I want to talk about more and experience more.
mm,
When you do something like that for such a long time, standing still in a sense
mm.
while moving, it gives you time to reflect and to think about who you are and about where you are in society. And I think nature is such a beautiful place to do it. And then New Zealand is, well, it's wild.
Yeah.
It's every day when we were walking, we would walk through several different ecosystems. And, the morning would be spent trudging through a river and then we would go up the mountains. No, so for me, it's a very special place. And it's the starting point of the films that I've made.
Mm. That's fantastic. I mean, watching the film, I think I was operating with the kind of imagining that you were maybe writing to the experience of the more experienced hiker, but perhaps you were not as experienced a hiker when you embarked on this journey. It was not something that was in your life in a big way before this.
No, nothing. No, when we went to New Zealand, we had kind of the idea of we'll learn along the way. We've got four
Mm.
and a half months, enough
Yeah.
time to learn, So also with food, we researched a lot of the gear that we took, but even then, I think, I had a big camera strapped on my chest, and our base weight, was about 13 kilos, which,
Wow.
the more experienced hiker would be like, what are you doing? But for us, it was more about just finding our way and not taking it too seriously in a sense
Mm.
of trying to. That was also the fun of it,
Mm.
figuring these things out. And for us, it was eating good food instead of what some people do. They have all these packs, or they don't even take fire with them to or a cooking or a stove to make their own food. For us,
Mm.
we still wanted to have fun and enjoy ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very one of the things I really enjoy about the film is that kind of exposure as someone who's very much a hiking novice, that exposure to like the hiking gear. I found that I really liked the midge covers that they put on their faces and just the use of their walking sticks and everything else, the kind of the lifestyle, the culture, and being able to sink into that culture is one of the real pleasures of the film, I think, because also it's a film that unfolds really, really with a certain kind of rhythm and pace that's slower than you might kind of be accustomed to. So, was that kind of something that you wanted to do? Really, just sort of like let us like luxuriate in the experience of hiking?
Well, like the experience of hiking is very personal, and I think that's the nice thing. One of the phrases I learned in New Zealand is "hike your own hike," and that's the
Mm,
let everyone do their own thing, and you can experience nature in all kinds of different ways. So it's more, so it's not the hiking experience for everyone, but it is. I think it is for some people. But for me, the important part is with making also my first film, which was also in the same similar setting, is to experience the feeling of being out there. And
mm,
the feeling of being out there is it takes a long time. You know, if you
mm,
walk a day through the rain, you walk a day through the rain. There's no shortcuts.
mm,
um, so for me it has to have a certain pace and a certain slowness to it to really experience what it is like to be out there. And well, you in New Zealand you have the sandflies, which are as horrible as the midges in Scotland. So you know all those things are part of it. And but at the in the moment that you're in it, it's not fun. But somehow, a couple of months later, when you talk
mm,
about it with other people, everyone has those experiences
mm.
of being swarmed. So for me, the important thing was of okay, I want to put you as a viewer in this journey with these two people, so that you can really get a little bit closer of understanding what it is like to be out there for such a long period of time.
And so, in the making of this film, obviously, one of the key elements is this incredible use of the Scottish landscape, and some just like absolutely stunning visual, kind of landscapes and that kind of thing. So I imagine that was maybe some elements of replication in shooting the film because were you traveling to kind of very remote locations all across Scotland? Like, how did you plan that? How did you plan that journey?
Yeah, so the couple of things we so it's two hikes in Scotland that we kind of did. So it's the West Highland Way and then the Cape Wrath Trail that follows about 650 kilometers in total. And, before we shot the film, I went there and I walked most of it myself. I had to stop before the ending because I got injured in my foot. But so
Mm,
then I have a pretty good idea of what's available and what's there. But then while filming, we don't have an helicopter or a 4x4, and there's a lot of places that you can only come by really walking there. So that's what we do. So we have a crew of like the main shooting crew is only 6 people,
mm.
and we walk to places that we want to film.
Wow.
So we cannot do everything because that would be too much. We can only walk about 10 to 12 kilometers max a day because we also want to shoot. So it's
Mm,
kind of 50-50 in a day what we can do. But that means that I look at the whole route and I pick a couple of stretches that I want to film that I think have something beautiful to give or are also possible, because if it's more than 100 kilometers a stretch, for
mm,
us it's not really possible because it would take 10 days to do that, and
mm,
we cannot bring that amount of food because the weight would be too much, because we're also bringing the cameras, the
mm.
batteries, like all those things are in our backpack. So most of the time the backpack is 30 kilos or 34 kilos,
It's
which we're taking with us.
mm,
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It must require a huge amount of passion, not just from you, but from everyone else to be able to be willing to commit to that kind of model, that kind of approach.
I have no idea where I find these crazy people every time they want to join me on these
Yeah.
adventures. But I think that's the whole thing. It's also it's such an adventure that um, when I ask someone to join me and they kind of hesitate, I know like maybe this is not for you,
Mm,
because you really have to go all at it, because it is very tough. You know,
mm,
with the weight and with the weather and the cold, and anything can happen on it. It's like going on a real hike. Anything can happen. The only thing is that we also are making a film, so we're also having this emotional difficulty, not just the physical one
mm,
of making the film in an environment like that. And then, so if you look at the places where we went, where we filmed, we went there. So we walked up the mountains, we walked through, wherever it was that we filmed, and that gives also this extra element, I think, to the film, that everyone knows what the experience and the feeling is that we want to portray
Mm.
because they've done it. So they slept in their tents last night, or they were in the storm, or they got attacked by the midges. All those things they felt. So then it's so much easier to portray them in a film as well, because it's very close to what the reality is.
Mm.
And that makes it very interesting, because so much of these nuances of being out there then kind of are embedded in the film.
Mm. Does that mean when you're on a shoot like that, you have to kind of be a bit willing to roll with the punches? You know, if something goes wrong, you could change the entire story could change or the entire scene can change at the drop of a hat.
100%.
Mm.
Yeah, and one of the nice things is we shoot chronologically. So because we walk chronologically, we start at the beginning. So when there's a change, it means we can really change. And then at night,
Mm.
I'm writing on my phone or the laptop if I have it with me, writing the new scenes to kind of
Mm.
make it flow. But I think, especially the North, because the whole cast and crew felt what the movie was, that if the surface level, if it would change a bit, it didn't really matter for what the emotional level was.
Mm.
So we could really go with it. But no, it happened a lot. And that's also, I think, one of the fun parts is that nature is uncontrollable. So you have to kind of flow with what it is. So usually when you make a film, you have a shot list, you want to control everything. But
Mm.
for us, we get to a location. I've been there, but that was months before, and the rest hasn't been there yet. So in the moment, we have to decide, okay, how are we going to shoot this scene? How
Mm.
do we change it? What's going to go different? And so it's every day is you have to be creative in with what you have, what's available, what's there. And I feel that most of the time working like that, kind of nature provides,
Mm.
and it gives these little gems and these little things that you would otherwise never have, because we also don't have lights with us, so it's
Mm.
everything is natural light also inside. um no, and then so there's scenes in the film that are now in the film that were just um created in the moment, and other scenes that were in the script that we then said, no, let's not do them because
Mm.
we're going in a little bit of a different direction. So the story, it keeps on developing. It's not finished after the writing process.
Mm.
It keeps on writing itself while filming.
It feels almost like I mean, it's obviously a fiction, but it does have some elements of documentary in there, and the fact that it's a lot of it kind of grows organically from your circumstances. But I do find that the film's drama is very well handled and very kind of the way that the characters develop. I mean, there's this beautiful scene of someone overhearing their best friends sort of talking about them, not knowing that they're
Yeah.
listening. And it's kind of performed and the shot is structured in a way that I haven't really seen in a film before. And so I'm interested in like how you worked with your actors, what the management of the drama, the character development was, because it's a subtle film, but the drama it does
Mhm.
grow. The characters do grow with the film in a very interesting way.
Yeah, well, funny of that scene, what you just said is that happened in real life with my friend in New Zealand. I was taking
Wow.
a shower on one of the campgrounds and I heard him talking to his girlfriend outside.
Mm.
I don't know if I've told him this, but for me, that was such an interesting part of, because all of a sudden something is revealed, like the truth is revealed, without them actually having to talk to each other, which I
Mm.
think was interesting. Well, for the drama, I think what there's these it's also based again on the journey in New Zealand, where I think we were 26, 27, so we were still fairly young. And if I can only speak for myself, but what I noticed on that trip is I was so busy with myself, with who I was, with the things in my head, that there was not a lot of communication between me and my friend. There was superficial communication, but like good conversations about what we were doing and what the world was and what we were thinking. There was not a lot of that, and that really got me thinking of also other times and places that I've been where, I had maybe roommates and we also didn't talk to each other. So
mm,
for me, it was this essence of putting these two people together and making them live very closely,
mm,
but not really sharing that much of what's going on in their minds because they are still working out what's going wrong. Something's wrong with me, with the world, and I don't understand what it is yet. So then the drama has to be small because they can never really talk about it. And one thing then that's kind of a cheat of making a road movie, which this is it always moves along, it always moves forward.
mm,
So even scenes that where nothing really seems to be happening between them, it always moves the story forward because they're walking and stuff is happening and they meet other people. So I think the tricky thing was is towards the end where I had written the scene that's in the film right now, which on paper is quite cliche.
mm,
Uh, and I told also the actors is I don't know if this is going to work, but we'll see. Like after 3 weeks of filming, we'll see
mm,
if this is what it needs to be. And then after a couple of weeks, we talked to each other and said, I think this would be very beautiful. Um, and I think that's also it's this interplay between the actors who they are as people,
mm,
also between Twan, the cinematographer that I work with, that they slowly understood the way that I wanted to film this, which
mm,
is do as little as possible and just um, let the audience also feel it. Let's
mm,
not give them too much. They will know what people are feeling as long as we feel it and we show them enough.
mm,
And I think that that's also for me interesting. You can kind of be present in these moments with these characters who also just struggling a bit, trying to
mm.
have fun, but also don't really know what to do with their lives yet.
There's something so true in that where the world is so busy and there's so much going on and there's so much communication all the time, but so little is actually being said, and being able to like retreat to, as you say, a stillness in order to actually achieve that genuine intimacy between the two of them is a very powerful concept, I think.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, there's a lot of people that have never talked to themselves. If you
No.
haven't been on your own, like really on your own, not in the city, but in nature, with there's no possible way of communicating and be there for 3 days, stuff will come up, and you'll fight your best and your hardest and not let it affect you, but it's impossible, especially when you're gone for a month. And I
Mm,
think that's very interesting because there's a lot of growth in there, and it shows you what's the essence and what's really important.
mm.
Yeah.
So your film is kind of works outside of the sort of traditional funding and distribution models. So you're rolling this film out kind of in different regions. It's coming to New Zealand now after it had success, abroad. Can you tell us about what that approach is, and how you're going to be bringing it to New Zealand?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I have my production company with two of my friends, with Tom and Arnold, and we've made our first film, and we didn't get it financed through any. I don't know if you have it in New Zealand, but in the Netherlands you have a film fund, a national film fund that funds most of the films.
Mm.
But we didn't really go there because we thought, okay, we only need 75,000 euros to make this film, so that's what we made it for as well.
Wow.
Because we only have 6 people. That's the main crew. We had 3 people supporting us, and then the post production.
Mm.
And what we thought is, okay, this film is probably going to cost in reality like 300,000 euros, but no one's going to give us that
Mm.
ever. So how are we still going to make films with all these people that are really talented? And we said, okay, we can probably get 75,000 euros just by we got a loan, we did a crowdfunding, we had some businesses that helped us out, and then all the cast and crew they worked with us for way less pay, but they got a percentage in the earnings,
Mm.
which that's a strategy used a lot where normally there are no earnings. But now all of a sudden, with this rollout that we're having, the
Mm.
cast and crew, I think this might be their best payday ever.
Oh,
Which
fantastic.
that's also really cool that we can kind of get that.
Mm.
So the idea was first to just put it on our own website and have people pay for it, like a TVOD, like you can do on Amazon as well.
Mm,
But what we did a bit different than our first film is we thought, okay, let's do some PR.
mm,
We sent it to some newspapers, and one was The Guardian in the UK, and they came back with a 4-star review, which was crazy. We had this sort of little film that we made with a couple of people
mm,
for almost no money, and we got a 4-star review.
mm,
And then actually the first people that contacted us were Limelight from New Zealand, Australia. And they
mm.
were the first one that said, we want to distribute your film. So even before our home country of the Netherlands had distribution, we had Australia and New Zealand, which
Fantastic.
was really cool. But after that, it went really quick, and we got to, I think, in total 16 countries. So that's
Mm.
about 10 territories that are now going to show the film in the next couple of months. And we're like, things are still happening and things are still building. So,
It's growing
no,
and growing.
yeah, we did in the Netherlands, we had 124,000 people. So we were number 10 of the box office for Dutch
Great.
films of last year. And no, it's yeah. We've For me, it's like we already won when we made the film and it
Yeah.
worked. And then so from now on, we're just gonna go all at it and see
Mm.
how far we can get and how much we can do, and we cannot lose anymore anyway. But
Yeah.
that we kind of start this whole tour for us in the different countries with New Zealand.
Mm.
For me is quite special because that's where a lot of the story started. Yeah,
So you are taking it on tour. So you're going to
yeah,
be sort of coming to New Zealand?
yeah. I travel on Monday, so I'll be in New Zealand on Wednesday for almost 2 weeks,
Fantastic.
visiting, yeah, going through the city. So Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and Nelson, and just having Q&As and talking to people. And hopefully somewhere I'll have 2 days off, so I
Mm.
can just go to a hut for one day, sleep there,
No,
relive my adventure a little bit,
very
and
good.
then walk back. Yeah. That's the hope, but let's see how busy it's gonna get.
Well, we're very, very excited to have you here. And as I say, I very much enjoyed the film. Thank you very much for sharing it with us, and for speaking
Thank
to me
you.
today. Thanks, Bart.